ক্লাসরুম নিবেদনে NTAE সলিউশনস।
নমস্কার, দেখছেন হাই নিউজ ইন্ডিয়া ই সলিউশন হাই ক্লাসরুম নিয়ে আমি সৃজিতা রয়েছি আপনাদের সঙ্গে। আজকে আমাদের বিষয় হলো ইংরাজি, আর আমার সঙ্গে আরো একবার আমি পেয়ে গেছি, আমার সঙ্গে রয়েছেন মৃণালিনী দত্ত মহাবিদ্যাপীঠের ইংরাজির অধ্যাপক ডক্টর অম্লান গায়েন। স্বাগত জানাবো আরো একবার স্যারকে আমাদের অনুষ্ঠানে।
Namaskar. Thank you, Srijita, for your kind introduction. Before embarking on my topic today, I would like to thank the GB president of our college, Srimati Chandima Bhattacharya, for being the pillar behind all our endeavors. Thank you to our dearest principal, sir, Dr. Apurva Bandyopadhyay, for being the greatest strength of our college. And thank you to the e-broadcasting committee and all its members for their relentless effort and for making this possible. And to take a special name, the convener of the committee, Dr. Reena Bosch Mitro. Thank you to her. And I might miss out names. Thank you everyone who has given me this opportunity and for making this possible. Thank you again, Srijita. Now, if everything goes well, then I would like to begin with my topic. The origin and development of dramatic monologue with special reference to Robert Browning. Today, I would like to discuss about the development of the dramatic monologue in Victorian period. Now I'm sharing my screen. I was talked about the development of the dramatic monologue in Romantic period. Now I am focusing today of the Victorian development of the dramatic monologue. And it was the Victorian period. In this period, dramatic monologue reached its climax. And due to different characteristics, the first among them is the central and dominant influence of the sociology. And the second is the preponderance of the subjective over objective in poetry. And the third one is a restless rapidity and diversity of life. And the fourth and the most important characteristic of this period is the passion for democracy. Two representative poets of this period made the final contribution to this poetic genre. Lord Alfred Tennyson and Robert Browning. And they are the notable poets of this particular period. Tennyson was the connecting link between the conscious and unconscious art of constructing the dramatic monologue. The best example is his poem, Clara Vardiver. The speaker in this poem is a young but intelligent countryman. He is indignantly rebuking Clara, a proud coquette from the city, for having charmed and deceived his country friend. The deceit had resulted in the man's committing suicide, accusing her of his friend's death. The young countryman says, "But there was that across his throat, which you had hardly cared to see." Actually, the speaker is blaming or accusing the woman Clara for being responsible of the suicide of his friend. And here we see that the speaker is prominent, but the hearer or the silent interlocutor is probably absent, or the person is imaginatively accusing someone whose identity is quite not too much extent certain. It is the uncertain identity of the hearer that is prominent here. There are other examples of dramatic monologue of Tennyson, The Miller's Daughter, Northern Cobbler, Rizpah, etc. etc. Though Tennyson made a final contribution to perfect the dramatic monologue, but he is not free from flaws. Though he is a lyrical poet, his lyrical and powerful characterization is limited. He is actually the connecting link between the conscious and the unconscious art of the production of dramatic monologue. Preceding him, the elements were developed somewhat sporadically. His contribution to the bringing was the bringing of these together into single productions and the development of these into a harmonious and unified production. Though he was a lyrical poet, he contributed a lot for the perfection of the dramatic monologue. He is an expression of a gradual rise and fall of a lyrical emotions, but not only to the rapid turns of the thoughts and feelings demanded in the dramatic monologue. Not only was Tennyson limited in his style, but he was also handicapped by his narrow characterization. His characters are not taken from widely different ages and conditions of life, but they are types that we meet in everyday life. One of the greatest defects of Tennyson was his inability to appreciate the full value of the dramatic occasion. For the dramatic monologue to have the greatest effect, the character must be caught up in the supreme moment and in such a state permitted to pour forth his soul. And in that perspective, Tennyson was lacking. In my next slide, I am talking about the contribution of Robert Browning. Robert Browning is the poet who made the final contribution, who actually perfected the dramatic monologue. And apart from other elements, what he achieved in this genre is the occasion. Usually we found that the other two elements of the dramatic monologue, the speaker and the hearer or the silent interlocutor, were somewhat present in the preceding poetry. But it is the occasion, dramatic occasion, where Robert Browning perfected his technique. And Browning did not change the form of the monologue, but he replaced its lyrical emotions with a dramatic spirit, which was infused into the old form of dramatic monologue. This is the most important achievement on the part of Robert Browning. This slide talks about his proclamation about the dramatic monologue in the advertisement of his work Paracelsus. I do not talk much about this, and this portion talks about the contribution of Robert Browning. His contribution may be divided into 4 sections. The first was the infusion of the dramatic spirit into the old monologue form. Just as Edgar Allan Poe formulated the laws of short story and derived his laws of the dramatic monologue from the central principle to create and evolve the crisis without recourse to any external machinery of incidents. His second contribution to the dramatic monologue is the occasion. As a natural result of his purpose to reveal vividly the intricate meshes of the thoughts and emotions of the character, Browning placed his individual in the most revealing situation so that they can express their emotions, their inner thoughts properly. And if you look at the examples, such as the occasion in the book 7 of The Ring and the Book, where Pompilia, in her deathbed, telling the nuns the tragic history of her life, she realizes that she is giving the final expression. And on accounts of its natural dramatic significance, Browning often selected a deathbed scene. It is also remarkable in context of the poem of the bishop's orders his tomb at St. Prax's Church. There are other examples. He is also fond of ecstatic moments. And this is exemplified and illustrated by the poem Abt Vogler, The Last Ride Together, etc., etc. His third most interesting contribution to the dramatic monologue is his style. Browning's style, though at times abrupt and lacking in musical qualities, was always direct and forcible. He did not choose words for their melody, but for their fitness for expressing the exact state of the mind. His style is perfectly suited to the dramatic monologue. And the last but not the least, his contribution to the dramatic monologue was his characterization. His characters are not static, they are dynamic. And most of the characters are taken from different fields. And by presenting them, by situating them in a dramatic situation, he extracted the most universal emotions of the speaker, of the individual. And that's why he is the most famous poet in the genre of dramatic monologue. Actually, Browning did not invent the dramatic monologue. His contribution was the perfection of it. And that's why he is called the master of dramatic monologue. And not only are the Browning characters are lifelike, but they are selected from a wider range than those of the Tennyson. Browning's array of characters includes individuals from all classes and from all ages. When he wishes to present a view or an ideal of an age, he selects the most typical person for expression. And there are numerous examples we can cite. Say, for example, Caliban, Pompilia, Robbie Ben Ezra, Andrea del Sarto, Duke in My Last Duchess, etc., etc. And the section 6 of the Howardian version talks about the development of dramatic monologue after Browning. Actually, it was the declining phase, and though the poets of these periods tried their best to exercise this genre, they somehow lacked something, and that's why dramatic monologue did not come to perfection. The notable poets, the notable American poets in this context are Francis Bret-Harte, James Whitcomb Riley. They are famous in this genre of dramatic monologue. When we look at England, the most notable poets of then England was Rudyard Kipling, Mr. Alfred Noyes. They tried their best. They tried to perfect the dramatic monologue. They tried to inherit the heritage of Robert Browning, but somehow they lacked something. That's why they did not come to the perfection. So this is the conclusion. Browning mingled two forms to perfect the dramatic monologue, the lyric and the old dramatic monologue form. And by combining these two elements, by combining these two genres, he perfected the dramatic monologue. Now, I am going to tell you another version of the dramatic monologue by Ina Beth Sessions. Ina Beth Sessions, in her essay, described 4 or 5 accounts of the origin and development of the dramatic monologue. I do not go to the details of them, but what was most important in her essay is that she pinpointed some attributes and some discrepancies among these accounts. And then she formulated a working definition. And this working definition is important to understand the dramatic monologue. The first account Ina Beth Sessions revealed in her essay is the account of Stopford of Brook. And the second one is Samuel Silas Curry's account. And this account is to some extent important because in this account, Samuel Silas Curry pinpointed the 3 primary elements of the dramatic monologue: the speaker, the hearer, and the occasion. And at the same time, he mentioned 2 points, 2 crucial points. 2 of the best points that Curry made where the dramatic monologue derives its unity from the character of the speaker, and that the listener as well as the speaker must be realized as continuously living and thinking. This is the continuous interplay between the speaker and the hearer is the most important feature in dramatic monologue. On the other hand, Curry is confusing that when he says that the letter is nearest to the dramatic monologue. Letter is also a kind of genre which is nearby and which is related to the dramatic monologue, and then shortly adds that the dramatic monologue is nearer to the dialogue than to the letter. So in his comment, in his account, there is a discrepancy. Somehow he is lacking the integral quality of the dramatic monologue. That's why we find something lacking in his comment or in his account. Next, we turn into the account of R.H. Fletcher, a classification of dramatic monologues. Fletcher defined dramatic monologue. Dramatic monologue is found to be represented as a literal transcript of words spoken, written, thought at some definite time by some person, or who may be either historical or imaginary. But theoretically, he is not incorporating all the elements to the genre called dramatic monologue. That's why he is lacking the spirit of that particular genre. And that's why this account is not appropriate. This account is not the whole hearted, appreciated account. Next, we come to the Claude Howardian account, which I talked about a lot. So I do not go to the details of this account right now. Next, we turn to the accounts of W.L. Phelps and Bliss Perry. W.L. Phelps, in his book Browning, How to Know Him, defined dramatic genre is not a meditation, not a soliloquy, but is a series of thoughts, usually confessional and addressed to either orally or in epistolary form to another person or to a group of listeners. These figures, though they do not speak, are necessary to the understanding of the monologue. And he listed these poems like Browning's Child Roller to the Dark Tower came, in addition to the illustrations of the Andrea del Sarto and My Last Duchess. Another account of Bliss Perry in regard to the dramatic monologue is that the interrelations of drama, of narrative, and of the lyric mood are peculiarly interesting. Recognizing the conventional three characteristics, speaker, occasion, Perry further stated that the genre is the dynamic revelation of a scene in action, not a mere static bit of character study. He was interested likewise the fact that the dramatic monologue touches to the lyric in two ways. Many examples use distinctively the lyric measures. Self-analysis revealed in dramatic monologue is the very nature of this lyric impulse. If we look at these two accounts of these two persons, two critics, two scholars, then we can find that their scopes are limited. Their characterization, their elaboration are not sufficient enough to describe, to saturate the genre called dramatic monologue. This slide talks about the discrepancies of these different kinds of accounts of those scholars. Some of the listed poems are explained to have no hearer. Others are said to reveal not the speaker's character nor the hearers, but the character of the people described by the speaker. In one of those examples, the Flight of the Duchess, both the speaker and the audience were said to be almost entirely lost sight of. That's why Ina Session thought that a working definition is needed to properly define that genre called dramatic monologue. And then she formulated a working definition and the classifications as well. The definition of Ina Sessions goes like this: a perfect dramatic monologue is that literary form which has the definite characteristics of speaker, audience, occasion, revelation of character, interplay between the speaker and the audience, dramatic action, and action that takes place in the present. Judged by these 7 characteristics, a poem or a prose work may be a perfect example of the dramatic monologue type. And she also gave classifications of the dramatic monologue. She divided the classification into 5 categories. And these categories are depicted or represented in a graphic format. This table shows the 4 types of dramatic monologues: a perfect monologue and their characteristics, imperfect monologue and their characteristics, formal and informal dramatic monologues and their characteristics. The perfect example is the example that comprises of 7 well-judged elements of the dramatic monologue. She also elaborated these dramatic monologues with graphic examples. A perfect example of the dramatic monologue is Browning's My Last Duchess. Here, Duke is the speaker, the envoy is the audience. The arrival of the envoy to discuss the wedding plans furnishes the occasion. The interplay between the speaker and the audience is the constant throughout the poem. And the speaker reveals his own character at the same time he is sketching that of the Duchess. And the action unfolds as the poem develops, giving the reader's impression that this is the original occasion. Not a single characteristic is not underdeveloped. They are deftly portrayed, they are adroitly depicted here. And the presence of the audience is made clear when the Duke asks, "Will it please you sit and look at her?" The envoy inquires about the expression of the Duchess' face, and the replies, "No, not that first. Arwen turned and asked this." It was not the husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. In for the audiences, the active interplay between the speaker and the hearer. This is also the delineation of the My Last Duchess as a perfect monologue. Then it is an example of the imperfect monologue. As the name suggests, imperfect monologue is lacking some aspect of the dramatic monologue or the 7 characteristics that Ina Session mentioned. Here, the only lacking prerequisite is that the audience does not hear the speaker. That's why the interplay is not possible here. Despite the fact his every move induces implications, the whole situation is at once amusing and awesome. So this is the example of imperfect monologue, the soliloquy of the Spanish cloister. Then we move to another monologue, which is the example of formal monologue, a woman's last word. It is actually the formal or the skeletal form of the dramatic monologue. It merely comprises the formal elements, formal three elements: the speaker, the hearer, and the silent interlocutor. The other elements are desperately missing. That's why it is an example of formal monologue. The lines are taken, the lines of the poems are elucidated here. And this is the example of approximate monologue, Evelyn Hope. And here, Evelyn Hope, there is a speaker, the occasion, but the audience is dead. So the presence of the audience is rarely felt. And the hearer, the interlocutor, is silent here. That's why it does not capture the proper sentiment of the dramatic monologue. This is the concluding remark, and J.B. Whitney of the University of Texas wrote a letter to Innovative Sessions where he described the dramatic monologue is, I think, one of the best forms of disciplinary reading. That is, to use the words of the late Professor Jenu, reading pursued with the express purpose of feeling and stimulating inventive power. In a very peculiar sense, the dramatic monologue demands that the reader be constantly alert and that he catch the significance of every word and that he clearly visualize the dramatic situation. The reader, like the author, must be able to lose himself in the speaker and must exercise whatever creative imagination he possesses. No other art form so feeds and stimulates the inventive power. That's why dramatic monologue is so powerful. It has the twofold capacity to stimulate and to stimulate the audience, the reader. At the same time, it creates a stimulus to invent something, and it also makes the reader to be alert constantly. And this is the greatest virtues of the dramatic monologue. That's why dramatic monologue can be exemplified as the best form, as the best poetic form. Next, I move to the slide where I give the reference books for further reading. If you are interested, you can go through these books. These books are important, and if you have any queries, you may consult to me. And thank you, everyone, for your patience and kind attention. So thank you. It is over to you, Srijita.
অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ আরো একবার স্যারকে এত সুন্দর করে বোঝানোর জন্য। আশা করবো ছাত্রছাত্রীদের অনেকটাই উপকার হবে, আর যদি কোনো সমস্যা হয় তারা আপনার সঙ্গে অবশ্যই যোগাযোগ করবে, সেটাও আশা করব। অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে আজকের মতো হাই ক্লাসরুম এখানেই শেষ করছি। পরবর্তী আপডেটের জন্য চোখ রাখুন শুধুমাত্র হাই নিউজে। হাই নিউজ নির্ভীক।
Thank you.
ক্লাসরুম নিবেদনে NTAE সলিউশনস।